Luke Hsu and Dr. Chih-Yi Chen as our featured guests for our Lunch Break series, courtesy sponsored by the MTNA Collegiate Chapter at IU and in partnership with Project Jumpstart and the ASTA chapter at IU. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it was really nice that the both of them had a recital yesterday. I hope you guys had a chance to see them in action. So just a brief introduction of each artist that we're featuring together today. Luke Hsu, a violinist and composer, is a laureate of several international violin competitions. For example, the International Violin Competition of Indianapolis, the Paganini, the Wieniawski, Isang Yun, Nielsen, and the Queen Elisabeth competitions. As a chamber musician, he has also collaborated with several artists, and to name a few, Margolin, Cho-Young Lin, Il Shaham, and orchestras such as Chicago Symphony Orchestra and the New York Philharmonic. Currently, he serves as music advisor for the K&M Festival in Stavanger, Norway, which he coordinates. And as a composer himself, he has written numerous works for duos, specifically written for the Willerstein duo. And his biggest influences are Lutoslawski and Webern. As a violinist, Luke started in Houston, working with Friedel Lack and Emmanuel Baroque, and he debuted in the Houston Symphony at age 16. He continued his studies with Cho-Young Lin at Rice University and Donald Willerstein at the NEC Conservatory, and currently he is studying with Pierre Moel at the Mozarteum University in Salzburg. He is also a Violin Channel young artist. Dr. Chih-Yi Chen is on the faculty at the IU School of Music. She is originally from Taiwan, and she's a very versatile collaborative pianist, a chamber musician, and soloist herself. She has worked with several young violinists with Professor Mimi Zweig, who is the violin professor here at the IU School of Music, especially the IU Violin Virtuosi, who performed with Luke this past weekend in Indianapolis. She's also worked with numerous collaborative musicians of the old school, such as Jamie Laredo, Atara Rod, Peter Stump, and also new artists this day, such as Luke himself, Richard Lin, Stephen Kim, just to name a few. She received her BM, Master's, and Doctorate Music degrees at IU, and currently she also is a faculty member at the IU String Academy as well. So let's just jump right into the conversation. Just to start out, there will be a few questions that we have formulated based on their bios and what we're interested to know, and then we'll also have a Q&A that you can ask questions to them yourself. Just to start out, Luke, and then to Chih-Yi, how did your career start, and who and what are some of your personal professional influences that impact you in shaping your career today?
Well, thank you so much for having me here, first of all. For me, Friedel Lack, my first teacher, was obviously the most instrumental. She really encouraged me to pursue music as a career, and I started with her when I was 10 years old. So she was very, very instrumental. But in terms of later developments, I think it's interesting that I studied with Jimmy Lin, who's such an big touring artist, and to see how his professional life is shaped with teaching and playing chamber music, and of course now he's also conducting, and he's also a director of a festival in Taiwan, and I think that was really inspiring to see someone who not only plays so well on the violin, but was able to facilitate all of his talents in other fields as well, to expand his influence and to expand his love and knowledge of the music to all kinds of people. And that's, I would say, he was so inspiring in terms of that. In terms of when my career started, I mean, I never really thought like it was a
exact point.
Point. Exactly. It just kind of
happened.
It just kind of happens. Exactly. But I mean, we can talk about the processes, and the things that I've gone through. But I don't know if I could define, like 3 years ago, that was when my career started.
I think for us students, like, we would be interested in how you paved your way. Maybe during as a student, you had that mindset, this is what I'm going to see how it's going. So maybe talk to us about the process, like approximately when sort of started.
Well, I mean, of course, every stage is so different. When you're, before adolescent years, that's different from your adolescent years, and that's different from your college, your undergraduate years. So every phase is really different. People have different developing trajectories. For me, I would say I did some local competitions when I was really young. But I was so fortunate to have someone like Fidel Lack and Emmanuel Borak, who were very, very well known, not only in this country, but also outside of this country for what they've done. So I've always been put into this perspective that it's not just the local world that is out there, that there's much more. And so I was very fortunate with that. But in my undergrad years, I think that was a really, in a way, that was a really important 4 years for me, because I actually I wouldn't say I concertized a lot, but that was a time where I really grew as a musician, grew as a person. You kind of need the silence, the time to really just have the ability to grow. I think nowadays with Instagram and Facebook, we get the pressure of looking at our friends doing so much, and we're like, oh, we want to do the same things. But I think that's just it loses the perspective of how much time and effort it actually takes to get where some of these people are. And it's a lot of quiet years, actually, that this happens. And that was my undergrad year. Those were my undergraduate years. And then I would say even stretched when I was in Boston as well, when I was with Don, with Mr. Weilerstein. So I think those years are so important, and you shouldn't take them for granted. It's really, really, you can say some of those years are probably some of my happiest years in some ways, because you just have no judgment of yourself. And that's really important, and to really find your own voice. Once that happens, once you feel more confident, then start putting your shoes out there. And of course, I was also doing stuff when I was in my undergraduate years, but I wasn't necessarily so focused on, I must have these concerts, or I must have this. So I would say that's my development. So it kind of just happened kind of gradually. Yeah.
Great, that's awesome. So let's try to hear Dr. Chen's perspective, because she's a very international person. She came from Taiwan. And what was your upbringing in Taiwan that sort of shaped your career coming across the globe to the U.S., and how did it land for you?
It's interesting what Luke was talking about when career happened. So I started playing the piano when my mother made me at age of 3. And I had a tiger mom. But I thank her for being a tiger mom. But I was practicing like an hour by age 4, which is crazy. But I grew up in a system in Taiwan where I started kind of like in a music school, like a magnet school, starting from first grade. So I was having all the theory dictations or this and that since first grade. And then my primary instrument was piano, but then everybody has to have a minor instrument. So clarinet was my minor. I didn't play for 10 years. But anyway, so I grew up in an environment where I was trained intensely for music, but I was surrounded by friends who are not pianists. My best friends are a violinist, and I play a different instrument. And there are juries at the end of every semester ever since first grade. I didn't play the clarinet until third grade, but so starting from third grade, I was playing for friends for their juries without realizing it was going to be a career path. I was just playing for my friends for juries because they had to play for mine, so I played for them. So that's how I grew up in Taiwan up until high school. Then I wanted to come to the States, or I wanted to get out of Taiwan to study. Taiwan is a very small island, and the field of music is very small. So I've grew up seeing all the teachers ever since first grade. So I feel like I really needed a different perspective and different influence. So I decided to come to the States to study. So I came, and of course, when I came at the time, I decided to come to IU. I was accepted, so I came. I wanted to come to a bigger school where I thought I could maybe have time to pursue I wanted to be a lawyer also, or a journalist. And so instead of going to Julia, I wanted to come to a university where I may have an opportunity to take other courses. So I ended up not doing that. But so I came, and because I grew up playing for friends, so it was part of my life, even though my degree was in solo piano, and I had all my degrees in solo piano because IU didn't have a collaborative degree until 3.5 years ago. But I was telling some of the friends at dinner the other night, the first day I got here, I started practicing in the practice room. I knocked on people's door, random people, not pianists, just random people. And I said, if you need a pianist, let me know. I'll be happy to play for you. And so I think it's that attitude that led to many, many, many things later. And as a freshman, I was hired as the rehearsal pianist for the international harp competition, for the USA harp competition, for the finalist. I remember I had to play a really good harp concerto 6 times with a finalist being a freshman, and I was being paid. So you could say that's kind of the beginning of a career. It's hard to say when the career started, but I think it's your attitude that would lead to another thing or open a different door for you. And that's kind of what happened to me. That while pursuing a degree in solo piano, which I was fortunate to finish my doctorate and then I have it, but in every second of my spare time, I was playing for people or with people, which I absolutely loved. And I think it really helped me grow. And then it kind of led to where I am right now. So that's kind of what happened to me.
So I think this leads really directly to our next question, is our interest in competitions. So Luke, what is your preparation for the competition arena, and what sort of indulged you to start doing competitions? And Chi, you're a very well-known collaborative pianist for international competitions as a collaborative pianist. So what are some challenges that you face when you have to play for 6 different candidates with different repertoire, but some might have the same repertoire that overlap together? So maybe just a conversation on how you two would be.
Yeah, so I am actually not a natural. I didn't really grow up thinking that I was going to do major competitions. My Jimmy was the one who pushed me to do my first one. And that was the Montreal competition. To be honest, in the beginning, I didn't really quite know how to prepare for one because it's so overwhelming in terms of the repertoire and everything. But so I don't know if I really quite understood in the beginning the procedures, but what I did understand was I got much better. And I think it really pushed me to. I mean, I didn't get into the finals, but regardless, it really. First of all, I saw some of the best violinists, perform, and so that was really inspiring. The second thing was that kind of preparation work it's just it's so deep that actually after the competition it still stays. And I was kind of and the confidence also, the level of confidence when you perform afterwards, it just somehow becomes higher. And so that was my first one. And then as I went on, I would say the first one that I really took very seriously was the Nielsen competition, which happened 4 years ago, and I've always loved the Nielsen Violin Concerto. It's something that nobody really plays.
Jimmy plays it.
I know he does, but I somehow never learned it with him. So that was the first competition that I did, and it was not the first, but the first successful one that I did, and I realized that I first of all gave myself ample time to learn the repertoire. I see lots of people rushing into competitions, and I don't know how good of an idea that is. Like, some people I hear do like 6 competitions in 1 month, and I'm like, well, to each their own. But I think for me, I need some time, to prepare well. So that was the first most important thing. The second thing was I didn't treat it like it was a competition, and I think it's all the psychological. If you start thinking, oh well, this person is so good or this person's not so good, and they're going into this competition, and what is the chances that I'm gonna do well? I think that's a very short-sighted way of seeing the whole process. I was just talking to someone really recently, and he was kind of freaked out that so he's going to do the Menuhin competition, which has become so popular and important these days. And he said, oh, this person is competing with me, and like I'm just like, and I said slow down. I'm sure everyone is amazing, but you're also just as valid. Your voice and opinion is just as valid as other people. It's not to say other people's is more valid than yours. If you think that way, then yes, then their opinions on the music, their musicianship is more valid. But that has no logic, because each and one of us, I think one of the most beautiful things about music is that everyone should play differently. And that's because our own personality, our own vision for the music is different, and that should be encouraged. So to think that one is better or worse, that's not really the right attitude to music in general. I mean, it's like in the art world, I don't know, like who would say, oh yeah, this painter is better than that painter, like Monet is better than Cezanne. I mean, that's just like, they're just so different. You can't say one is better than the other. So I think with that attitude, a lot of things change, and you start preparing for the repertoire for the sake of the music. And that's when the whole process changes, when you forget about the competition. And the worst thing that's going to happen is you get eliminated after the first round. I mean, nobody's dying, So, and you just learn from that process. You see what worked and what didn't. And, and sometimes, look, it's not even in your control. Sometimes it's because the jury had someone else in favor. So you can't really take success or failure too close to your heart. But what you should take close to your heart is your musical development and basically your artistry and what you have to say with the music and what you've discovered in music. So that's...
Yeah, I think competitions are really interesting, and being kind of on the other side. I mean, I play in there, but I'm not competing, so it's really not about me. And I've served as the official pianist for the International Violin Competition of Indianapolis twice, 14, 18, and I also played with participants in 2010, 2002, as early as 2002. So I've seen, at least for that particular violin competition, I've seen a lot of wonderful violinists coming out as the winners or laureates of the competitions. But I also have seen a lot of wonderful violinists who were not laureates. I mean, they were participants and they were in the first round or second round. They're also making careers, and they're making wonderful careers. And so I think competitions are a great platform for a jump in a career, because it's, as Luke was saying, it really enhances your growth as a musician just by preparing for it. And you grow and you learn so much about yourself, and you also learn so much about the industry and how other players play. So then a lot of, it's kind of a boost for the career. But then while doing it, even you may not have won it, you still may have a career just because you did it. Right. And so, I like what you're saying about the approach to it. It's like, if you look at it, it's the only way to gain your career. It's probably very nearsighted. Yeah. You use it to enhance or hope for the enhancement for your careers, but it's more about the growth of you as a musician, which I think is really the most valuable thing you take away from doing competition. And if you win it, it's a bonus.
Right. And it's also a great way to meet people. Either the jury, the pianist.
Yeah. So we played together. We played together in 2018, yeah?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how we met. Right, and you met conductor. Leonard Slotkin was the conductor for the finals for the 2018 violin competition.
Right.
So it's a great opportunity. I mean, it's like you put all the famous, valuable, wonderful musicians in one spot for 3 weeks. Yeah. And for any competition, it's the same. Whether it's violin or piano, it's the same. It's the same way. So it's a valuable thing to do. However, the mentality you have it, but if you can have a healthy mentality toward it, I think you gained a lot more from doing it than just feeling disappointed if you didn't win it.
Yeah.
I think it's really great what they both said. But let's just shift gears in terms of the current music industry. There's a trend going on where the musician's career is no longer just a performance or teaching career. It's shifting into what we call the portfolio career. So you're indulging things like performance, teaching, and entrepreneurship at the side. So for Luke, you are a K&M Fest music director. So it's sort of like an interdisciplinary crossover kind of festival that I've looked online, and you guys are should feel free to go check out the website. It has really cool programs that they have, and you actually write some of these articles in the website. Can you tell us more about your projects in the K&M and what led you to do crossover projects?
I do think that, sorry, just to backtrack a little bit, and I'll talk about K&M Festival. Yeah. I think that music has always been kind of a business of not just performing and teaching. If you look at someone like Mozart, he was one of the first entrepreneurs in terms of programming piano concertos, having subscription. He was the first one. Nobody ever thought of that. And Paganini, for instance, was such an entrepreneur. He managed himself. And the way he made people go crazy for his concerts, Liszt is another one. So I think as a musician, this is also, it's our true duty to think in terms of this. And it's always been like that. So, sorry, back to K&M Fest. So K&M Fest, what's my relationship with Norway, first of all? Well, actually, originally I had none. So what started it was, and as we were talking about with competitions, how we get to meet juries and stuff like that, I do think that in the music industry, the most important thing is personal relationships. And that is probably true for most industries. And I was at a festival, and I played, and there was a friend of mine who I met at that festival, and he said, my mom has a festival in Norway. Would you like to come? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. didn't think too much about it, and then I went, and I realized that festival had been running for 15 years. You see, I mean, you just never really expect these kinds of things. And I prepared really well. And that's also part of so it's not just meeting people, it's also being well prepared. That's really, really important. And so the executive director really enjoyed my playing, and I had some ideas. So she was like, well, how about next year I make you an artistic advisor to me in terms of programming, since you have so many great ideas and I really enjoy your playing. So that's how that connection came to be. So back to K&M Fest and what I think about. So the thing that's true for really anything, anytime in the music industry, is people want to hear something different, something new. So our biggest, we really put an emphasis on programming contemporary music and programming like newly composed works. And this time we had someone from the University of Bergen. He's a Hungarian-Canadian composer, write an 8-movement microtonal piece for 5 singers and 5 instrumentalists, and it was about Spinoza, who's a philosopher from the 16th century, talking about the human conditions, and how we respond to what's our outside environment. And we were completely, we had to take a leap of faith in a way, that this was going to be something that would be accessible. But we know that with the inclusion, we also had dancers as well, and we had the support of this painter, who is one of Norway's most famous painter who's alive today. His name is Kjell Iversen, and he's like 90 years old now. I mean, he's pretty amazing. Such an amazing mind. So he painted a group of paintings that was inspired by chaos, because Spinoza talks about chaos. And we had dancers who were dancing to the music, but also the spirit of the philosophy about our reaction to things like chaos. And it was such a big success at the end of the day. It was probably the most popular thing on the whole series, because it was something that was so new. It involved so many interdisciplinary things, and it was it was just such an exciting experience just to see all of that put together, and so something that we really always put in priority is, what is something that we can program that is like worthwhile, like has a meaning to our lives, not just like some circus act, but yet it's something that's new, that nobody can hear it elsewhere, like this premiere, and see the dancing and to experience like this kind of wholesome experience, and this is how we like to go forward, and incorporating that, of course, with the traditional repertoire, and how that to keep it alive, to not just say, oh well, all we do is just Mozart and Beethoven, which is great, but when you have something that's inspired by this language but is updated to something that's really modern, that really creates creates new imagination for the audience. So yeah,
it's very great if you can check out the website. There's this post by Luke, and what that really captures me is that he says, does history tell us that we are due for a new era? So that kind of sparks like your thought on that, and things such as we're in the 2020s, like what is actually the relationship between music and the world today? Like, is it changing or is it still what it is? So I think that's a good conversation that all of us can have in the future with your colleagues, or right now, when we have questions with them. As for Chi, we talked about collaboration with Luke. Let's talk about you. Like, you are teaching at IU for the collaborative piano department. What is that like, and what is that different from teaching solo, I guess, private lessons in that sense?
Well, I don't teach pianists alone. I always teach with someone. With this, because I mean, occasionally we do, but and so what I teach, and some of the students are from my class. So I teach multiple things for the department. I teach the accompanying classes to the undergrad, freshman, and sophomore piano majors. It's kind of like a preparatory class for what they can do when they go to upperclassmen. I also teach collab majors, graduate students. I also coach pianists doing collaborative activities. I also coach chamber music. So there are a lot of components happening in my department that need attention. And so almost all of us in my department teach various different things. And I also play, and I like to play. So and I also have a 4.5-year-old at home. So it's it's a fine balance between maintaining a playing career, a performing career, then a full-time teaching job, and being a mom, which many people have done and are doing, and so I think it's something that I think we talk a lot about, like how to manage your time. And even when I was a student, as I said earlier, I was pursuing one degree, but in my ever spare second, I was doing something else. And so I think I embrace that kind of challenge. I really like it. And I think having a career in collaborative playing is all about that, because collaboration is multitask. You're doing many things at the same time. You're playing your part by hearing somebody else. You have to figure out what he's doing. He's doing something differently every night, and so you're the foundation of collaboration is multitasking, which is what I've done ever since I was little, and I really like it. But then when on a really practical sense, everybody has different priorities in different things. What do you do? And I think fundamentally is really if you really want it, if this is what drives you, and you have to figure out what drives you. And I think that's really important. And if you're not sure what drives you, then it's always good to try different things. And as we say, because in this the time of the world now, there's so many things that you can do. You can be a violinist, pianist, you can be a composer, you can be a director of a festival, you can be managing your own studio. I mean, there are many things that you can do that's related to what you study, but I think you need to figure out what drives you. Once you can find that, then it's not so difficult to figure out how to manage your time, because you know what's more prioritizing for you. You also, for me at least, I had to learn how to be very efficient with my time. But I also was not, for even as a student, I was not stingy with my time. I rather not sleep. And I know that I really, if I didn't have time, I really rather do the work than sleep, or I rather do the work than hang out with friends, or I rather hang out with friends because I feel I learn more doing that. But I think it's whatever that drives you at the moment. But then you really should prioritize what's the most important thing, and then you figure out how to finish your tasks. What's more important at the moment. And things could change, from one stage to a different stage of life. Things may change. But I think that's really one of the most valuable things that I gain, even as a student, is I multitasked and I liked it, but I figured out what to do. And now, I wouldn't say I'm the master of multitasking, but I have 1 hour to practice a full recital program in 2 days. What do I do? So I really have to figure out what to do, and that's also something that grew to learn what to do, and I think it's one of the most important things for anybody in any kind of career path to figure out what to do.
To add on top of that, Otto Klemperer, the conductor from the 20th century, his advice was always hurry slowly.
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, with that, let's move on to a lighter section. This is what I call the lightning section, where I will ask you fun questions, such as what is your favorite color? And you're just going to tell us briefly a few questions, because we've had a lot of deep talks, and I think everyone's head is spinning at this point. You have a lot of questions for them. So as you're thinking those questions, we're going to take 1 minute just to kind of get to know them a little bit on the personal side, these lightning questions. All right, so first question. Well, since we're on color, what is your favorite color?
Purple.
Hey! That's mine too!
Really? That's how we work so well together.
That's right, yes.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Tea.
What is your favorite food?
Chinese.
I should have a buzzer thing there.
Yeah. I'm just so not picky, as you know.
I know.
Yeah,
actually, I'm not picky either.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. As long as it's well cooked, yeah.
Favorite city?
Oh, that's difficult.
London.
I don't have one yet. I went to
and Berlin.
Well, see, there are many cities I have not gone. I'm such a... I just haven't had time to travel, which is really
I think
bad.
the next time when you see Dr. Chen by the hallway, you can ask her that question, and she might have an answer for you. How about favorite airport?
Singapore.
See, I have not been.
That's such a great airport.
Actually, Indianapolis is not bad.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
Indianapolis is very easy to travel. I don't really care. I just
Right.
want smooth security and not crowded.
Very practical.
Yes.
Favorite author?
IMD's not bad.
Favorite author?
Oh, so many. I just read Sense and Sensibilities. So right now Jane Austen.
I read a lot. I read almost all his books except for the recent one. This is a Japanese author named Murakami Haruki. The most famous one is Norwegian Forest or whatever it's called.
Mm.
Yeah. He's always up for the Nobel Prize, but he hasn't gotten it. I like his novels. Yeah.
Favorite composer?
Oh, that's difficult.
Or top three, if you have top three.
I can't.
I can't.
I can't.
I mean, it kind of depends on what we're playing right now. My favorite right now is Enescu, because I recently had just played Enescu Third Violin Sonata, and I absolutely love it. But you ask me in 6 months, I may not like him anymore. So.
Yeah.
Favorite piece or music to listen in the shower, or if
I like
cooking.
I like listening in terms of background music. I just listen to all kinds of things that I wouldn't normally hear. So I would listen to Palestrina, or Macho, or So I would listen to things that I wouldn't normally hear.
For a period of well, I still do, and this is funny because I always felt that I was probably a violinist in my previous life because I listened to more violin music than I listened to anything else, and I like the short pieces like Chrysler. On a rainy afternoon, I listen to Chrysler. I just adore all these short Lippes Live, Schindler's Mirren, and that sort of thing. So yeah.
Well, this is on the tech side. iOS or Android?
iOS.
iOS. Yeah.
Yes, okay. So before we go into questions, just give us 3 words of advice from each of you. 3 words. If you can summarize today's current industry and what sort of personality kind of quotes that you can give us.
It has to be 3 words?
I guess you can have more if you have, yeah. Or a sentence.
Perseverance and patience is your best friend.
I would say be curious, be courageous,
Yes.
and do not be afraid of presenting yourself.
Thank you. All right, fellow students and audience members, this is your time to ask questions to our panel. So feel free to raise your hands or just shoot out a question at any time.
Bethany.
So I'm curious how you're like when you were studying in college, like you were sort of in two fields, like solo piano and collaborative piano.
Yes.
I'm curious about how those like overlapped in your study.
It did overlap because as the pianists who are here, you all know you have to do X2, which is part of your major curriculum. So collaborative study is part of your major study if you're pursuing a solo degree. So it overlaps somewhat, but I don't know. I was just doing all kinds of things. I was, as I said, I knocked on people's door and I said I would play for you. And I played, throughout my undergrad years, I think I played for almost all the instruments at school. I've played for percussionist, I've played for tubist, I've played for double bassist, and I was the pianist for a harp studio. I think I just wanted the experience that I would not have gained as a solo pianist. Not that I didn't enjoy solo playing. I did my degrees all in solo, and I don't really perform solo so much anymore, but occasionally I do. So for me, in my personal case, it was everything that I did. So it was hard to define what was, because for me, playing piano is playing piano. There's not a difference that I was a different pianist playing solo rep or I was a different pianist playing collaborative rep. I was a pianist and I play music. So I think that's my approach to everything. Even I play an A on the piano, I play like a pianist. Or I play twinkles with a 3-year-old. I play as if I'm a pianist playing a piece of music. I don't disassociate myself playing one thing as one type of piano as another. So for me, everything kind of just mingled up. So that's kind of how my study was. Yeah.
How do you mentally prepare yourself before like a concert? Like, what does your day look like? Like the day before, the day of the concert.
The day of the concert? It really depends. Ideally, if I didn't have to do anything else, like there's nothing else in the world that I have to take care of, usually it's, if the concert's at 8 o'clock at night, like last night, we played the concert at 8 o'clock. So we had a rehearsal in the morning, and normally you would get a rehearsal sometime during the day, a dress rehearsal or whatever. And then ideally, if I had time, I would take a nap. Then I get up and I get ready, and then I warm up, and then I go to the hall. And then play a little bit on stage for sound check, and then you play the concert. Ideally, there would be occasions where I have to go to pick up my son. I have to give him a shower before the concert. I will have no time to warm up. Or concert hall is very far away. Then you have to get to the hall like 6 hours prior to the concert. You have to just hang out in the hall. So it really depends, and you kind of have to be flexible, right? Yeah. If you're, I mean, some people have, they have to eat certain things before, or everybody has different routine, and then I think the more you do it, you kind of figure out what works for you. Some people, like, he doesn't eat before a concert. I do, so everybody has a different routine to follow. But sometimes life is very complicated, and you can't exactly follow that routine, and you kind of have to figure out how to be more flexible and to work around that kind of different schedules. But if you do it enough, you don't think twice. That's just what you do.
Sometimes psychologically, the day before or the morning of, I think in the psychology of the listener, what do I want? What do I want them to take home with? and so that's what sometimes I really think psychologically. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because prior to having a child, a lot of things are really important. Like, you'll think about what you're gonna do in the concert, how you hope to present, and so after having a child, sometimes you don't have time. You have no time to
Even think about that.
Yeah, I remember when my son was little, I had to play and go home and feed my child. I had no time to think about, did I do okay? Was I nervous or was I anxious? It's like, no, you feed your child, you go play a concert, you go home and feed your child. Which, in a way, it was kind of a revelation, because then it took a lot of the anxiety, not that I have anxiety, but it took a lot of the attention away from what you normally put on a concert.
Right.
So throughout the concert, I probably remember I played Schumann Quintet with the Michelangelo Quartet.
Yeah.
But I had the absolute wonderful time playing because I didn't have to think about anything else. I was enjoying playing so much. But I wasn't spending so much time thinking about, okay, am I going to play this passage correctly?
Oh,
or
no,
this
no,
and that.
no,
No,
yeah, no.
I was feeding my child to the minute before, and then I went to the hall and I performed. It was so wonderful, and then I left.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
I do think sometimes our worst enemy is expectation.
Exactly. Yes.
And that is, but you know, like when you think, oh, like this has to be a great concert, or oh, this has to be a bad, or this might be a bad concert,
Or somebody's in the audience, you know, like somebody, a famous conductor or a manager that's there, or
yeah.
a jury member, and then you're like, oh my God, I'm being judged, and so that would, I think, create more pressure and issues for you than if you don't just think about that.
Yeah.
So I'm in like the really awkward stage of life right now, where you have one foot in school and one foot in an almost career, maybe. And I've noticed there are two really distinct challenges that weren't really there before. Number one is there's so much conflicting advice that you're getting from panels, jury members, everything.
Yeah.
And then number two is just the overwhelming volume of rejection and criticism. So I wanted to ask how you two both deal with the amount of information that you get. How have you learned to train yourself which information to grab and which path to move forward through? And then also how to stay strong when you've been knocked
rejected
down
so
Yeah.
many
30
times.
times in a row.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to start?
Well, it's a tough question.
It is a tough
It's
question.
a tough question, and it's kind of
It's a good question.
It's a very good question, and it's kind of it's a strong reality of what any of the musicians is facing. It's not even students, any musicians. Well, I think, I don't know. I can't exactly draw my own experience. I think I've been extremely lucky. I came to a good school, and I worked really hard, and I had met great mentors along the way who've helped me in my career. Not that I worked really hard for it. I think it's easier said than feel, but if you have mentors, if you've met mentors, and I think it's very important to have mentors who've been in the field for a long time. They've gone through what we've gone through throughout their lives, and they've seen more than we have seen. So if you have met or have few of them, try to go to them for advices, which is really important. I think it's important to take advices that are constructive, but you have to seek them. Sometimes they don't come automatically, but I think it's extremely important to find constructive advices in the midst of all the rejections and disappointment that you may have. Of course, passion is very important. You have to have it, otherwise you can't really go on. But we all have to be practical too. So I think when you're in a juncture where you're not really sure which path to go, or the information, as you say, is conflicting, I think advices are really important if you can have them. And they may not be good. I mean, how do I say this? They may not be positive advices. They may be negative, but as long as they're constructive, I think that's helpful, at least for me, through my, and it's still, even now, it's hard to take negative advices, or
it's hard to swallow.
It's hard to swallow, and especially once you start a career, then you felt you've done some things, and it's really hard to take it. But I think as we mature, and we're always maturing, at one point you'll be able to swallow, and then you'll realize why that advice was given to you.
Right.
And then when that day comes, that means you've grown too, because you've processed that advice. Then hopefully you'll help you figure out the next step. And I think it's in every small thing, musical or a big career thing. It's always at least how I come across some kind of a hump.
No, I completely agree. It's interesting because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the rejections and failures that I've had. We always focus on the successes, I think, and especially with all the Instagram and Facebook thing, we look at other people's successes and we think that's all they have, but that's just really not true. Mm-hmm. It's really far from the truth, actually. Just even this example with Indianapolis, I applied to this competition 3 times. Twice
you did?
Yeah.
Oh.
Twice I didn't even get in. I applied, 2012? No, 10. 2014 I didn't get in. And then 2018, look at where I am now. So a lot of it is, you just have to take. I know it's really disappointing for especially a couple of days after you see the rejection. You're like, oh, well, that could have been, but didn't happen. But to be honest, onwards and upwards, right? Really, that's the most important thing, because you just never know what's happening behind. If you don't get criticism, you just don't know what's going on behind the scenes. It could be maybe you didn't have people had really amazing sound recording engineers. Maybe you didn't have the best, but that doesn't necessarily have something to do with your artistry, or it could just be people have different agendas and you are somehow not part of that agenda, but that's not a reflection of you. It's just a reflection of the situation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important to put those things into perspective rather than take it so personally and think, oh, that means that maybe I'm not good enough. Right. Yeah. Because as I said, everyone is good enough, actually. At the end of the day, everyone in this room is good enough. The question is, how do you get there with that?
Or how do you move forward from that? How do you get better? Yeah.
Exactly. We are all very individual, and that's something that should be encouraged.
Right. Absolutely.
We have time for one more question. Yes.
What are your approaches to preparing new repertoire, especially when you don't have a lot of time a short deadline?
Well, I definitely try to have as much time as I can have, just because I don't like to feel rushed, especially when it comes to new pieces. Are you saying just let's say someone emails you and they're like, oh, we have a concert next week, and these situations? Well, I think it. Actually, sometimes, what Bernstein said, right? The best thing happens when you don't have enough time.
It usually happens when you don't have enough time.
Yeah.
Yes. You don't procrastinate, so you have to do it.
Yeah. So usually when there's very little time, I actually take note at what I'm doing because I'm actually practicing better.
Well, because
No,
you
it's
have
true.
to be more efficient. It's like in my line of work, we have to learn things very fast. I mean, we may be called, my colleague can attest for it, we may be called in 2 days, you have to do something, and you've not played it. You really have to learn it. You really have to learn it. And if you have really limited amount of time, you do everything you can in your brain power to learn it.
Yeah.
And so in my case, you spend more time if they're recordings. I mean, in this situation, normally if you prepare for a deeper repertoire and all that, sometimes recordings are not very helpful. But in this particular situation where we have to learn things really fast, I spend more time not looking or not sitting down on the piano. Or I spend
that's
more
so true.
time looking at the score, listening the recordings with the score. I would be eating lunch and I would be like, it's like you do everything in your power to learn it. And it's amazing when we put our brain and all the power together, you all can do it.
Yeah.
But I think it goes into the individualism. You have to figure yourself out. What's your strength? What part of you that help you learn fast? Is it listening to the recording that's fast, or you sitting down at piano that's fast, or viola fast? You have to know yourself well enough, and then if you really can't do it, it's okay to say no. It's actually better to say no.
Yeah.
That's.
Well, I had to learn like a concerto in 1 week, like a newly composed concerto when I was in Belgium, and that was really interesting because you don't have any recording, right?
You just have to figure it out.
You just have to really figure it out. So for me, I mean, as with any piece of music, it's first the score, just an overall impression. Like it's not even like. It's not about how difficult a passage is or how it's the overall structure, the architecture of the piece. I think that's the most important thing to gather. And then I just remember the first maybe 2 days, I really just went through all these passages just really slowly, and our brains are really exactly. Our brains are amazing.
We just don't use it enough, I think.
Yeah. You don't underestimate yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Really don't underestimate yourself because I wouldn't have imagined that I would have been able to learn this. I mean, it was quite long. It was like 20 minutes. And
do you have to play by memory?
No.
Oh, good.
That's no. But yeah, I mean, and then after that, your muscle memory starts to like be in place.
Right. Yeah.
And then it actually happens quicker than you
Well,
think.
I think that, all of us, all of you are in wonderful institute that you receive wonderful trainings. So, so a lot of things will come to place themselves if you put your mind to it. As what Luke is saying, you don't have to worry about the passages and all that, but you basically, we're trying to learn music, we're not trying to learn a passage. So when you have to learn something very fast, is to learn the bigger picture first, then you fill in the blanks.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so it's like you look at the overall structure, how it goes from beginning to the end, what kind of style we're talking about, what is their character difference, what kind of sections, and then by looking at it, okay, this passage requires more time. Then you fill in the blank of the notes, which I think is always a good way of learning things anyway.
Well, in conclusion, we've had a really good session with two of our guests, Luke Hsu and Dr. Chih-Yi Chen. We've covered most of the topics that we believe that will be very beneficial for you, but of course there are so many things that they are doing in their own careers that we probably have not talked about today. So feel free to check out what they're doing. Luke has a website, and Dr. Chen, you can see her around campus. And maybe stay after if you have time, just to kind of touch base and get connected. This is a session for networking and questions. And thank you so much for spending your time here with us. I think there are some leftover food and drinks there, so feel free to take them with you on your way out. Again, please follow us, MTNA Collegiate Chapter at IU on Facebook for more events like this. And we thank you Project Jumpstart and ASTA at IU for partnering with us in this event. Thank you.